Welcome to SunnySpeaks, here again with another review for you, and you. And today, I'm here to talk about Final Destination Bloodlines, directed by Zach Lipovsky and Adam Stein, and starring Caitlin Sanawana, Teo Briones, Tony Todd, and many more. In the newest installment of the Final Destination franchise, Stephanie, played by Caitlin Sanawana, is plagued by nightmares of a horribly violent incident. Traveling home to find answers, Stephanie and her family realize that death is coming for them all one by one. But if they can figure out why, then maybe they can avoid the bloodshed. Final Destination to me has always been a low ceiling concept, but definitely can be fun and heart-pounding. How does the sixth installment hold up to the rest of the series? First, let's start super honest. The characters in Final Destination never really matter. They are just vehicles to get us to the next horror set piece. As far as how these characters were, I found them all very forgettable, but effective for what they were. The main characters, Stephanie and her brother, Charlie, played by Teo Briones, were the best when it came to their chemistry and dynamic on screen. Nothing special, but I appreciated both of their perspectives and how the movie speed runs, them being on the same page about what's going on. My favorite thing about this movie is that it knows what it is and doesn't waste your time. I love a movie that knows what the audience is here for, and I can say the deaths in this movie did not disappoint me, though it always feels like empty calories in the end. I've heard so many positive things about this Final Destination in particular, but though I really appreciate how this installment separates itself from the others and creates an almost origin story of why this has been happening since the first film, I do feel like these movies don't give me much, and I don't think that they ever really could, because again, the low ceiling concept of Final Destination. Because you know that all of these characters you're watching are going to die, it doesn't really matter what they say or what they're going through or what their emotions are during the journey of that, because you know how it's going to end anyways. What I will say though is that Tony Todd has such a meta but dope monologue talking about life and death, and him being a part of the entire series and being able to kind of create an origin for this series as well, him being the narrator of that, his character having his own origin was really cool to me. And I'm just really happy that Tony Todd, somebody who is a legend in film, was able to have one last role before he passed that not only is iconic but can be motivational and can definitely bring a tear to your eye when you understand the context of him passing right after this filming. So that was probably the standout to me outside of just like the death scenes. They do up the ante in this movie. I wouldn't say more than other ones have, but more just they go far. Final Destination movies always do that, and I think the opening set piece of this is really well done and definitely creates a lot of tension. It did for me at least. And I think a lot of the deaths are very inventive. They use one that like uses a big magnet in a very interesting way, having a big magnet go against a person with a lot of piercings. You can see where that goes. They have a callback to the logs on the highway, which I thought was pretty cool. I think that they have some really cool ways of playing with the audience on what they understand and what they don't, because this is the most self-aware Final Destination we've ever had in the series. And so a lot of things that they do are kind of poking at you and wondering if you feel like you know where things are gonna go. I also really liked the Final Destination math that they added into this. I think a lot of people have played around with that sort of idea, like, oh, like this is gonna hit this, it's gonna make this roll over, this gonna make this fall over and hit you, and then you die. The movie does that in a very interesting way where you think that that's a joke, but then that's exactly what happens. And creating that Final Destination math to be canon to this world, I find really cool too. And I think that the death concept is probably the strongest to me in this one. Death isn't scary to me, but I do think it's the most personified it's ever been in the entire series. And I've always had this idea of a Final Destination movie. This would be so meta though, but I always had the idea of a Final Destination movie being from the perspective of death and just his perspective, or their, because I don't want to put a gender on death, but their perspective on a Final Destination movie. I think that could be fascinating, but could also be like the lowest grossing Final Destination ever. Speaking of gross, this is the highest performing Final Destination for a opening weekend, I believe, and that's amazing. That's really cool. It kind of sucks because I think they're just gonna make more and try to milk this, but for them coming back after years of not having a Final Destination out, this is definitely a really great one to start with. Again, for me saying this is a low ceiling concept, they really do try to make make this as fun as possible, and I had a fun time watching it, even though I have my little criticism and stuff. But I don't think the movie is trying to be more than it is, and again, I appreciate that. When we know our characters are gonna die, when we know that we're here for just the set pieces and how they die, I feel like the movie gives you that very quickly. So very appreciative of that, and I had a fun time. Overall, I would give Final Destination a cloudy rating. I enjoyed myself. It was a fun horror experience, which is always a good time when you can desensitize death and just make it something to laugh at, because it's normally not a laughing matter. And though the performances weren't the strongest to me, I think the cast gave what they could to a very fun but empty script. The death scenes were cool but are kind of forgettable to me, but still were very cool, and I'm glad that people are enjoying this movie as much as I've been hearing that people are. If you want to see the complete opposite of a horror movie like this, I would say go see Bring Her Back, a movie that connects you to your main characters and you really feel like you don't want them to get hurt. While this movie, you're just waiting for them to get hurt and to see if it's fun in the end. This has been my review of Final Destination Bloodlines. If you have seen Final Destination Bloodlines, let me know what you think in the comments down below, because perspective is key. If you haven't seen it, let me know if this review makes you want to go see the movie or not. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. I'll be back again, and peace.